Welcome to the Real Estate Roundtable Podcast, where we sit down with some of the most successful real estate agents, brokers, and team leaders to learn about their journeys in this industry. I'm your host, Art Bettuzzi, and as a seasoned real estate agent of 29 years, I'm always fascinated by the stories of how others found success in this business. On this podcast, we'll be talking to our guests about the obstacles they overcame, the lessons they learned, and the tips and strategies they're using in today's ever-changing market. Whether you're a real estate agent, broker, team leader, investor, or just someone interested in real estate, you're in the right place. Our guests come from a variety of backgrounds, and they all have unique insights to share. We want to have fun with these interviews, but we also want to make sure that you come away with actionable tips that you can implement in your own business. New episodes will be released weekly, so be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks for joining us on the Real Estate Roundtable Podcast. Let's get started. All right, everybody, welcome back to the Real Estate Roundtable Podcast. I'm your host, Art Bettuzzi. So I have a unique guest today. Not that all of my guests aren't unique, but this particular guest is somebody that I've known literally 43 years ago this month. We met in college, and he was a couple of years older than me, but we met and we have been bonded along with a whole group of our friends for over 43 years. And it's been an amazing ride. And what I'm interested in talking to my guest about today is the fact that he has not only had an amazing career in real estate, but at some point he pivoted and went into home building, which I got to be honest, I don't know a heck of a lot about home building. So I'm planning to learn some stuff here today as well. So without further ado, let me introduce you to my guest, a longtime friend, Mr. Tom Franklin. Hi, Tom.
Hey, Art. You looking good?
You too, my friend. You too. It's been a long time. I haven't seen you in person in a little while, right? But seems things are moving along as they always have for you, right?
Yep, I'm getting close to the end of my career, but enjoying home building that I've been doing now for 15 to 20 years. And it's been a good career shift for me away from real estate, but in a lot of ways, it's the same career.
Yes, it is. It's still dealing with people, right? So, Tom and I met when we went to Drake University in Des Moines, Iowa. And, I left Iowa and Tom stayed. And so, Tom, why don't you tell us a little bit about after college and how you got into real estate to begin with?
Well, I was moved back to Chicago after school and worked there for a couple years. And then I had an opportunity to move back to Des Moines. And it was real estate that really was my first job in Des Moines. So I applied to one of those career opportunities in real estate ads and met the broker, and he offered me a job if I got my license. So I went and took the class, similar to what you teach now. Mm-hmm. And I passed the test and then went right into real estate with a small firm. And that was a good start because it wasn't a large, 100-person office. It was a 15 to 20-person office at the time. And so I got to learn a lot of basics and help newer agents. And I got into a little bit of teaching myself during those early years in real estate. Really? So that kind of helped me get a bridge for how do you make this career work? And I went into it full time. It wasn't a part-time gig. This was my career. This is how I'm going to earn my income. And I was young. And the biggest challenge was trying to work with older people who were, more than twice my age. But I was able to do it by trying to be a professional and dressing the part.
So when you first started, what were you, mid-20s?
Yes.
Mid-20s. So you've been in real estate in one form or another for going on, what, 35 years?
Do I have to say more?
Well, I know I've been doing it for 29, and I know you've been doing it for longer.
Yeah,
So
no.
that's what I'm saying. You're probably in that 35 plus year range, right?
Yep, correct.
Okay. So when you first started, and it's funny, Tom, because I'll talk to people who've been around for a while in this business, and the shift in technology since we first started, and you even before me, has been just amazing, hasn't it?
Oh, totally. I learned old school, get on the phone, call people, uh, try and go see them in person. And luckily, or not luckily, but I live and work in Des Moines, which is a 600,000 people market, and you can get anywhere in town in a half hour.
Right.
So it's grown over the years, but it was a more people to people business back then. And you're able to go see people within the course of your day, as opposed to having to do when we did contracts, I would meet with them in person
Right.
and go over the offer and then get them to sign it and go see the client right after that. So it was people in front of people. It wasn't like it is now where technology rules the day in terms of getting offers put together and so on. And we even went on tour and visited properties that came on the market. So we would do that for 2, 3 hours once a week.
Right. So I mean that was the way it was even when I got started in terms of, the paper and the pen and the going to see and them, doing tours, all of that. I mean, even though, I was in the Chicago market, you were in the Des Moines market, it was pretty similar. And then, starting in about 95, 96, we started to see more and more technology, the advent of the computer coming into the business and computerizing contracts just so that they could be printed out. You type in their name and print it out. I mean, so step by step, but could you have ever imagined where we are today in terms of real estate based on when you started and what we had when you started?
Not necessarily. I work with a lot of old school agents over the years, but I embraced technology. So I was got a computer when I first could. Got one of the first cell phones in my car, which was a walkie-talkie type arena. So it was the beginning of that technology. So I kind of embraced it, and in some ways it's passed me by now. But it is amazing how social media and how marketing is very, very different than when I was in the business actively.
Well, even the marketing of yourself and the advertising costs. I mean, back then, did you advertise in newspapers and little magazines and flyers and do all that kind of stuff?
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah, it was, mailings. It was, obviously people to people, going to events. Yeah, I imagine it's a lot different today in trying to market yourself. Are people still doing bus benches at
A little
all?
bit here and there, a little bit. I wouldn't say, it's as prevalent as it used to be, but certainly with the advent of social media, people are definitely the brokers that I've talked to as part of this podcast. I mean, their primary lead generation techniques, social media, which for the most part is free. So when
Sure.
I talk to people about this, they're like, come on, old man, you can't be serious that, you spent money for this. Yeah, we spent some real money for this, didn't we?
Yeah, no, we, in my, career and when I started my own real estate company, we advertised every home that we had in the newspaper. And that was our main source of advertising. And obviously the internet was as well, but it wasn't at that time social media. And being a builder today and seeing how agents advertise our properties, it's a little frustrating because a lot of times they don't do that much. They just rely on social media and the multiple listing service to sell property. So, from a builder perspective, in terms of having the agents sell a home for you and market it, what do they do? I've struggled with that over the years, especially coming from old school marketing where you actually, spent money and put things in the paper and did mailings and so on. And almost none of that is done today.
Right. Well, part of the reason, though, you understand, is because it's not as effective as it once was.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, people don't read the newspapers like they used to.
No,
That's for sure.
right. And so, I mean, some of the shift has occurred just based on where, the consumer has gone, and they've moved away from papers and they've moved into, scrolling and their phones or their iPads or their whatever. So, we got to meet the market where they are today for sure. But let's go back a second. So you started out and you started doing business. Now, when you first started, or even into your first couple of years, what was a good year for a broker in the Des Moines market in terms of either transactions or volume?
Yeah, back then it was trying to hit the $1 million club mark. And our average price range at the time was probably 70, 80,000. So you had to do a fair amount of transactions to get $1 million worth of sales. So that's not listings and sales, that's just sales.
Okay, so that's maybe 10, 12 transactions at an average of about 70,000. So that was the goal, is to hit that $1 million. So how long did you work at the first company that you started out with?
Probably about 5 years.
Okay.
Uh, and then I went to a bigger firm, Better Homes and Gardens, and worked there for around 8 to 9 years.
And just out of curiosity, what was it that made you step from one to the other? Because I always get that question too. At what point should you change, or do I want to change?
Yeah, no, good question. It was the small firm that I started with. I was actually the training manager for them. Uh, and being at a younger age, now maybe I'm heading towards 30 and I'm married and I wanted some more potential growth. And the new firm gave me a chance to do some teaching as well as more opportunities uh, in getting involved in different facets of real estate.
So as you were coming up or in that time frame, um, what was your kind of thought process in terms of your personal business? Were you looking to get to a two at that point $2 million mark, $3 million mark? Was it a financial goal, or was it a transaction goal? What was sort of driving you each year?
Well, certainly to keep growing the business, getting more um, prospects out there, um, spreading word of mouth of where I was and what I was doing. But those years were not easy real estate years. Uh, and that's because of the fact that interest rates when I started were 13, 14, 15%.
No.
Yeah, what the heck is that? I know now people are complaining about 6 and 7%.
Right.
But back then, probably 1/3 of my deals were contract deals or assumptions of
Really?
FHA loans. Yeah,
No
maybe
kidding.
more. I mean, you had to be creative in putting a deal together. And
So explain what a contract deal is for people who don't necessarily know.
yeah, it's not done much anymore.
No, that's why I'm asking.
Yeah, no, it's where a seller is selling the property and he has the ability, either because he owns it outright or because he has a loan, that he can sell it himself to an individual. So it's the seller acting as and holding the paper of the mortgage, let's say, and with the buyer. So we would create that down payment. So you'd run through all the terms of basically a mortgage with the seller when you wrote up the offer with the buyer. So you're talking about, how long is the transaction gonna last, or how long is that contract gonna last? Is there gonna be a what's it called, a
Balloon?
balloon payment at some
Right.
point, 5 years or so down the road? What's going to be the interest rate? What's going to be the payment per month and all that? And that's a lot of the way real estate was sold when I started, and it kept that way for a little while.
Were you repping the buyers or the sellers in that deal?
Depends on whether you were a listing and selling agent,
Okay.
which there was probably more of that done back then. Because your sign in went in the yard, and that meant a little more than it does today, where people call on. Now it seems like people are coming with an agent to most properties.
Got it.
Um, but back then people were driving areas that they wanted to live in and making calls to agents who had it listed. So I ended up selling both sides of the transaction a fair amount of time.
Well, that's cool. All right. So that was unique, being able to do the assumptions and being able to do these contract deals. And then at some point, now was this late 80s, early 90s, or mid 90s?
Yeah, right around the early 90s, and at Better Homes and Gardens, and that was going fairly well. They had a progressive company and a growing company, and interest rates were coming down,
No.
and so things were more active. And Des Moines is a unique market because it's always been a good market, never been a great market. Our highs and lows are more of an even keel market. So we typically don't have a seller's or a buyer's market, but it just meanders along. So there's no boom and bust typically in Des Moines. We have a growing market, but it's a slow grow. It's not. We don't have 100,000 people moving here in a year at all,
Right.
as opposed to Chicago might have 100,000 in a month. You know.
Yeah. We have our months.
And people get to know areas of town and specialize in areas, which I think is still true today. And so I tried to specialize in an area and market myself that way. And I enjoyed real estate. I enjoyed the process of it and selling day to day. But I was young enough and wanted to push the boundaries of the real estate business, and I saw an opportunity in getting into a brokerage of my own, which we started Next Generation Realty. The business was based on the flat fee concept. So we had one fee for every seller. So it was to go after the sellers in the marketplace and control the inventory that way.
Okay, so this was you and somebody else, or maybe you by yourself, started Next Generation, and the concept was flat fee. So explain that. If I was a potential seller, how are you pitching me on what you can do for me?
Well, part of it is we can market the home, and we did it through newspaper and internet. We were one of the first companies to have all our listings on the internet. So we
Okay.
embraced that technology. And it wasn't through the multiple that homes were sold. We would sell our own listings. So we would market them aggressively through the internet and through what social media was at that time, which was pretty limited,
Right.
and newspaper advertising, which was fairly productive at that time. We can sell your home for a fixed fee. At that time, it was $2,790, I think was our fee, $2,790. We would sell your home. So we would market to the whole market, and they would give us a call, and we go out and talk to them about our program, what we do to sell their home, how we negotiate with the seller and or with the buyer, and we do everything from start to finish. So we made a flat fee. It was all based on volume.
Got it. How'd that go?
Went very well. We had a nice 10-year run.
Wow.
And it's still in business today. I just made a transition when I had the opportunity when the market was fairly flat. We had a longer run than 10 years. I was with them probably 13 or 14 years. In 2008, the market definitely took a major downturn.
Yeah.
So volume really got kicked in the head, and things really slowed down. So there was no way we were going to do the number of transactions that we had been doing. And so the market took a left turn on us. And the only way that Next Generation survived, and has to this day, was to get smaller. At that time we had 3 offices. We probably had 40 some agents, and we were rolling. And then all of a sudden, 2008 came, and it really turned things around. And right at that time, I met a guy who was from the Chicago area, and he was doing a small development, a townhome development, and they were just getting started in a major area of our market, a major suburb, and they were going to do 50 townhomes. And the project was just starting, and I approached him about us marketing the homes for them, the whole project, which they agreed to. We got the project to market to them, which was very, very unique at the time. To have a small player like we were, flat fee player, managing at the time a fairly large townhome project. But in 2008, 2009, homes weren't selling very fast.
Right.
So this guy in Chicago had hoped to sell out this complex in 2-3 years. He thought he was from bigger markets, and they would come in and knock them out. You'd have 15, 20 sales every 6 months, and he was hoping this project would be done and he could manage it from afar. Well, that wasn't to be the case. Here in Des Moines, we don't blow out projects anyway. In the best of times, you're maybe moving 10, 15 homes in that price range. And it was in the mid to higher price range of, at that time, it was 279 is where they started. And that was a higher price point for a townhome.
Right.
They were in that 1,700 square feet with a finished basement. A lot of them were walkouts. Beautiful piece of ground in West Des Moines, but the market was slow for that product. And if you remember in 2008, it was the mortgage industry that got hit real hard. When I joined this as a builder, I came in as a partner in the building concept. So I put a little money in to be a partner in the project. And there was 2 other partners. One was a major player who had major dollars, and the other one was this guy who was trying to sell it from afar. So I came in as someone on the ground who would run the project day to day. And I had never built homes before, but I'd been involved in several new construction homes in the real estate market. So I learned on the fly how to build homes. And it was a slow go. That first year, we probably sold 5 or 6 of them. And we did everything we could think of to have radio blitzes, to have big ads in the newspaper, trying to get people out. And slowly but surely, the project caught on. And, the next year we sold like 10 of them. The next year after that, like 15 of them. But it took us 6 to 7 years to finish out the project, which is
Wow.
much longer than you would like to see a 50 townhome project sell. But the market was slow and we built slow. And we were able to do that because we were well financed, had a lot of money behind us. The big player in the market with us as a major partner is a billionaire. And an interesting story is one of my jobs was to find financing for the project through banks, and get the best terms that we could. Well, if you recall, in 2008, 2009, a lot of townhome projects went under,
Yeah.
and banks got a lot of this stuff back. And the banks in Des Moines, there were some local ones, but a lot of them are connected to larger markets, U.S. Bank and so on. And I went in and talked to these banks, and they wanted nothing to do with the townhome project, nothing to do.
Right.
And I'd sit there in the chair and say, this project is not going to go bankrupt. Do you know who our partners are? Do you know how much money we have behind us? We're not going to build fast. We're going to build, make a sale, build a little more. So we always had one or two homes going, but they would laugh. They would say, thanks for coming in, but we can't do it. We can't help you. And so, funny enough, the bank or credit union that I got to finance us is a fraternity brother.
Really?
So that's where I brought the business, was to Mark Killian's credit union, commercial credit union operation, and they took a chance on us. And obviously we never missed a payment. We never even thought about not finishing the build out. And banks made out very well on our money,
Wow.
on our project. But at that time, you could not. It wasn't an easy sell, put it that way, for a townhome project. They thought condos and townhomes were dirt.
Right. I
And
certainly remember that from the condo end of things. I lived through that piece of the bottom dropping out on my end of things, but I didn't realize, obviously townhomes being built would be affected by, the banks taking back all these different properties.
yeah, they just were extremely skittish. And we really, it was a hard sell. And we had to pay, a higher interest rate because of it. And we did that for a few years. And then as the project kept going and was going well, we started to command a little bit, and we could have moved, but we tried to stick where we were because they had been good to us, and stepped up.
That's great. So you did that project. Now, just out of what I want to make sure I understood you clearly, you were as a broker or as an agent, you sold the properties as well as oversaw the build, or did you sort of bifurcate and go, okay, I'm no longer going to be the broker, I'm going to be the builder? Is that what happened?
Yeah, that's exactly what happened. I became a building partner, and then I sold my interest in Next Generation Realty because I wasn't going to be there day to day. And I got a couple agents involved in selling the project at Next Generation Realty, and they were the lead people, and they did very well by the project. In slower times, they had consistent sales from what we were building. And we built, it was nice stuff. And, today may not sound like much, but they have more than doubled in price range in what, 16 years? No, not quite. 13 years later or so.
That's a healthy return. Nobody's going to complain about that.
Yeah, they really, yeah, if we had that ground today, they would do phenomenal. Uh, great location, great project, great quality build. So I'm proud of that project.
Well, let me ask you, because I've known you. you didn't have you were a finance guy in college. So how did you take on, a building of a property like this? I mean, what'd you do?
Well, pretty much, they had started the first building. And so the person who was kind of sort of in charge of it was still working full time. And he was trying to do this project on the side. And so every vendor that they had, I did an analysis. What were their prices? What were they offering? And tried to find one or two other potential in that category. Let's say it was building materials,
Right.
windows, carpet, whatever it was. I would go out and try and find other vendors who could give it to us. Because my job initially when I came in, we need to cut costs, cut our costs in building this. How can we do this? How can we build a quality project and a quality home that people would want in a down market and give them a good value for their money, and at the same time make a profit.
Right.
And so that was a huge challenge. And so I researched, and we changed probably 80% of the vendors that they had initially.
Okay.
And so at the time, it did offer something that they could get a fair amount of business when they didn't have much business. So it's kind of crazy how the market has gone up and down over the years for new construction because, at that time, I couldn't get banks to work with me, but a lot of vendors wanted to work with me.
Right.
So that was the good news. I had some leverage with them, but I didn't have with banks. And then as we got stronger, banks wanted to work with us, but the vendors wanted to increase their prices. And being a smaller market, we have to this day a shortage of workers, who want to do framing, who want to do electrical work, plumbing, and so on. And so they have raised their prices significantly.
Hey there, Real Estate Roundtable podcast listeners. I want to take a moment to tell you about our sponsor, I Love Real Estate School. If you're looking to get your real estate license or fulfilling your continuing education requirements, I Love Real Estate School's got you covered. As an Illinois licensed school, they offer the state-required broker pre-license course, managing broker pre-license courses, post-licensing courses, and continuing education. And the best part, you can take the courses either through their live stream with a live instructor or online home study. So no matter where you are, you can get the education you need to take your real estate career to the next level. I Love Real Estate School is committed to helping you succeed in the industry. That's why they offer comprehensive, high-quality education at an affordable price. So, if you're ready to start your real estate journey or stay up to date with your continuing education, head on over to iloverealestateschool.com today to learn more. So, just again, going back to that first setup, you did all of the sourcing of the materials, right? But when did you actually start to learn the construction end of it? Like, what kind of questions to ask about concrete and what, you mentioned framing and that kind of stuff. I mean, how did you learn all of that?
Well, good question. It wasn't easy. It came by being on site every day. I was on site every day, and I'd go in whatever we were building at the time and observe and ask questions and see what they did. I knew how it was supposed to look in terms of the framing. I knew how it was supposed to be finished, and so I knew things to look for, but I didn't exactly know, where a header needed to go. And so I relied on my vendors to have that experience and tried to hire good vendors who knew what they were doing and had been doing it for a little while to compensate for my little lack of experience in certain areas. But I had done tile work myself. I had done um, a little bit of framing, and I had done doing some flipping of homes during those early years. So I had done some work myself, so I knew enough to be dangerous.
All right. So that project took up your time for a period of years. Were you doing other things outside that one project during those 5 or 7 years?
No, I was invested in this and made my income through these homes, and it was a slow go, but I knew someone had to be there and had to drive the project.
So this project comes to an end. Woo! And so what did you line up for yourself? What'd you do?
Well, at that time, as it was coming to an end, I figure I'd find a partner is what I went out and searched the market for. Somebody who had a little bit of money and who could either be in there with me day to day or would be a silent partner, just be the financing behind the projects. So that's when I started Evergreen Homes of Iowa, switching from Highgate's Construction, which was that townhome project's name, to starting off on my own. I went out and found a gentleman who owned a car business. He was very interested in the opportunity to be a silent investor with me. And he was an engineer by trade and knew a little bit about construction and liked the idea of investing in construction. And so he formed a partnership with me. We started Evergreen Homes of Iowa, and that went along for a couple years. We built 3 or 4 homes, kind of slow at first, but they all sold. And
Well, hang on one second though. So you moved from the townhouse project, and you weren't doing like a whole you were doing one-off homes,
right, we were doing single family homes.
single family homes. Okay.
Yeah,
And sort of one at a time, or maybe a couple going at the same time. It's not like you were building a whole subdivision or anything.
yeah, not at all,
Okay.
not at all.
And so you started doing that. And so you yourself, you sourced the land that you wanted to buy.
Yep.
And did obviously worked with the architects to get the style of home that you wanted to sell?
Yeah, no, I'd work with the designer on getting plans, doing a lot of research, what plans would be good for this particular lot. And we would buy lots. We bought 2 or 4 lots in an area and build those out and then move to another area. And we did that for a while. After a couple years, he gives me a call and says, can we get together for lunch, the partner?
Yeah.
And I say, okay, yeah, I'd be happy to meet with you and go over, what's going on and what we're doing. And he tells me, well, he just quit his job. And so he calls me and say, how would you feel about if I came and worked with you? Because he certainly wasn't ready to retire and he wanted to work day to day. And so new phase of the business was, we worked side by side for, God, over 10 years.
Really? Oh, so that worked.
Yeah. Then he became a 50-50 partner where, we were both investing money on our projects and we were working side by side.
Well, that's
So,
fantastic.
yeah, no, it was a great partnership. And unfortunately, he's not able to do it today because about 3 years ago, he got Parkinson's.
Oh,
So, at the last home we built last year was their new home. And, he's retired now. And I have a minor partner who is a trim carpenter, owns a trim carpenting business.
got it.
And now we're in a different phase of the market, and that market has slowed again.
Well,
So
let's talk about that 10 years. About how many homes did the two of you build and sell during that 10-year period of time?
on average, about 8 to 10. Over that course of time, we built 3 townhome projects, smaller townhome projects. One was 4 homes, one was 6 homes, and another one was 18 homes.
Okay.
So we found these little niche projects that were a unique piece of ground that were kind of left sitting there. And we came up with a plan and built them out and did very well in those townhome projects for the most part.
Okay.
And we're doing some single family as well as that.
Got it. Well, I guess what would you look for in a site for like what do you look for now, I guess, in a site for a single family home? What would be interesting to you and what would be something that you could sell?
Well, that's the first challenge of building is finding a good quality site that will be very attractive to a buyer. So, cul-de-sacs are very desirable. The end of the cul-de-sac is very desirable. Walkouts are very desirable. So looking for lots that offer those type of variables, and at the same time trying not to pay a premium price for the lot.
And so site selection seems to be number one. And then how involved are you? I'm imagining a lot, but with the selection of the finishes, and how have finishes changed over your career as a home builder?
Yeah, well, it's gone from, gosh, browns when we first started to shoot now it's white and black, seems like, more contemporary. And, Des Moines is a Midwestern town that is typically 2 to 3 years behind the trends.
Mm-hmm.
So I would always try and research where the trends were going and then try and slowly do that. Des Moines liked to build things over and over again. And they did that for a long, long time before things would change. And now we're doing more contemporary homes, but more and more people want the modern home. More whites and blacks are popular. Square homes are more popular. Shoot, when I started in construction, everything was rounded corners. There was a period where that was really popular. Now you wouldn't even think about doing rounded corners. So, yeah, I was involved from soup to nuts in terms of what was being picked for the home. And when we had custom homes, I'd go over the budget and the allowances that the custom buyer would have, and I would help them and tell them where to go to make their selections and who to meet with and so on. And then my partner would do more of the accounting end, and I was with them on the selections and doing most of the sales presentation and talking on how the home was going to get built.
Got it. It occurs to me too that in 2021, you talked about things changing, but we had that run up on lumber, didn't we?
Oh my gosh, we sure did.
How
was
did that
crazy.
how did that affect you?
I shake my head because it seemed like everybody was getting greedy. Everybody wanted to raise prices, and there were shortages. So it wasn't just, building costs were going up, 10, 20% in a month or two, and 50% over the course of a year. It was now shortages. Now you couldn't get some materials.
Right.
So windows, we had to book 6 months out ahead of time. Several types of lumber, doors were difficult to get. So it was very, very challenging, and that certainly changed the business. Things are kind of sort of back to normal. There's still some shortages, but for the most part, things are back to normal. But prices have not come down like they should have.
Right.
And that was the strange things about the pandemic. It created a boom at the same time we had shortages. So
Right.
people did pay some of the price increases. And actually, we're paying for that right now because buyers don't want to pay for the huge increase. And with the increase of interest rates, now they don't want to because they still want that 3%. And of course, they can't get that today.
Right.
And so now we have high prices and higher interest rates, and that's causing what I term as a major slowdown in the market.
Right. But you're not seeing prices dropping, right? So I mean, it's not like it's the prices are coming down. It's the prices seem to be either leveling off or still even, ticking up a little bit, right?
They right now they're coming down. It's going to be a long winter
Really?
for a lot of builders and for
Okay.
a lot of people who need to sell their home in the second half of this year. Uh, it it's going to hurt a little bit.
Well, but your inventory levels, I mean, I would tell you everywhere around here, inventory levels are low. I mean, low. And so, that's one of the biggest challenges that the Chicagoland market has is just low inventory. Do you have the same kind of thing there?
No, we don't. It's not very high inventory, but it's not low inventory. So it's somewhere in the middle. And certain price points, there's a glut of homes out there in the higher end homes over $800,000 price range.
Got
Uh,
it.
so first time home buyers, that price point is still doing well. And there probably is a low inventory of that category. In the mid category, homes are doing okay, but they're not flying off the market. And we certainly don't have anybody bidding above asking price like was happening 2, 3 years ago.
Got it. So with your company, then, the last few years been doing less homes because of them. I mean, obviously outside the pandemic, the last year and a half, 2 years, has it been you're doing less of those homes?
Yes, yeah, and we've slowed things down on purpose this year because the way the market was going, we didn't want to take on the risk of having spec homes out there that weren't sold. We didn't have any customs to build at the time, and so we've slowed things down. We're doing more remodeling work uh, than we've done before, and currently we don't have any homes under construction, and we have one new home that is for sale.
Got it.
So
But like you say, it's sort of been by design from
yeah,
your end of it, because your partner, obviously, with his health challenges, and you've sort of said, all right, here, let's purposely slow this down to match the market.
right, right. So we've done that consciously. We don't want to take the risk, and at my advanced age, being a couple years older than you, I didn't want to take the risk of building just to build as opposed to building to make a profit.
Right.
And so I've slowed things down on purpose, and hopefully the market will come back, which I'm sure it will. Des Moines is a nice steady market, and it's a growing town, and I'm sure it will continue to do well. And hopefully someday the Fed will stop raising interest rates.
Yes. Well, like you said, I don't want to say it doesn't bother me as much, but considering when I started, we were in the nines. And then we saw the twos and the threes, which we both agree, I think, that was artificially low. And but it gave us sort of a generation of people who were like, yeah, 3 4s, 3 2 3 4, that's what it should be.
Right.
And without recognizing the history of it, that those were artificially low, and at some point they were going to go up.
Right.
And we just hit that point.
Yeah, I mean, the government made some interesting choices with interest rates during the pandemic years to try and keep the market going. Little did they know that it was going to boom because they got interest rates so low, and that people were going to work from home and now would want a nicer home,
Right.
and things would boom. And obviously, I think they would have done things a little differently had they have known that. But they artificially got rates so low, and then the reverse happened very quickly.
Right.
And that's why they've been raising rates here in 22 and 23. But people got spoiled at the 3% mark, and they still want that. And so now you're going to see a lot of people holding off the move and doing more remodeling. I don't know whether you've seen that in your market.
Oh, yeah. I mean, again, that's probably the reason we have the lack of inventory that we have, is that people who normally would move are at a 3 or 4% rate, and they go, where I want to move, I'm going to have a 6 to 7% rate. Why don't I just stay here and remodel?
Exactly.
And absolutely, I mean, that is single family homes in the suburbs of Chicago, low inventory, right?
Yeah. And that'll help keep prices up, which is
Yeah.
great. And unfortunately, we don't quite have that. So that's why we're seeing prices come down a little bit.
Yeah. And again, I think, let's face it, some people really overpaid during COVID, during the pandemic. They got crazy and they overbid, 10, 20. I mean, in Chicago, 30, 40, 50,000. One of my partners in California, 200,000 over ask.
Oh my God.
Yeah. I mean, he sold the house 235,000 over ask. And
Wow.
yeah. And so, I mean, people just got crazy, and that fueled the increase in the prices. And I think that, even though they've maintained, which is a good thing to some degree, in this market, but I think that people overpaid, and that's what saw, the shoot up of all those prices. And so, maybe in your market, we're starting to see resistance in people saying, yeah, you know what? It wasn't really worth that, so I don't want to pay that today. Although in a new home build situation, I always say to people, like, should I buy, something that's resale, or should I buy new construction? And I said, you just keep in mind, when you buy new construction, you're buying with today's dollars. That builder is building with today's dollars, right? You don't have a choice. I mean, if I could give you the option to go back 10 years ago and buy all the lumber and all the materials that you could buy and fill up, storage places, would you do that in a heartbeat?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I
Right.
mean, you'd have the cost of holding that material, but prices were so much lower 2, 3, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, that it's amazing how much prices have gone up on materials.
Yeah.
And that is fueling part of our inflation issue. And as of yet, in the construction business, material lumber prices have come down, but
Yep.
most of the other materials like shingles, carpet, have not come down significantly at all. In fact, shingles keep going up in price. So a lot of materials keep going up and have kept going up, and have not come back down, even though the demand isn't quite there yet. That's why we need a huge shift in the market where people are really hurting. But I'm not advocating for that. I don't want to see that. But that's
Sounded
what we
like you
get
were, Tom.
prices to come down. I mean, that's how our supply and demand system works.
Right.
If you want to get prices down, and that's I don't think will happen. And the United States and Des Moines and Chicago are good, steady markets where we're not going to see that. And the reality is, around the country, there's a shortage of housing.
Right.
And so I think that's going to keep the housing market fairly steady.
Yeah. I agree. And I think that is something that, in certain markets, they absolutely need it. Maybe some markets, they need to come down a little bit just to get people, off the fence.
Well, in certain markets like Los Angeles, it's a boom and bust market.
Right.
They boom for 10 years and bust for 2. Boom again, they go through that periodically. Chicago isn't quite that boom and bust, but they have ups and downs, more so than a market like Des Moines.
Yeah, it's interesting. One of my students is coming from California, and he's coming to the Chicagoland area, and this guy's licking his chops. He's like, oh my God, when the average house price is 800,000 in the LA area. The average house price is 800,000. He said, coming to Chicago, and the average house price is between 3 and 4. He's like, oh my God, this is it. And he's like, this is he can't wait to get started based on his experience in LA. So, it's all perspective in this business, isn't it?
Sure, you bet.
One of the things that you being a home builder that I'd like to know is, what features of a home. Now, let's say you're doing custom. I mean, you've got a pretty good eye. I mean, I've been to your home. You have a beautiful home. You have a pretty good eye for what people want. But what items have you seen people sort of asking for more recently than they had asked for in the past?
Well, when I started in the business, it was more rooms. Rooms have a specific purpose. And then it became the open concept. And now it's higher ceilings, more windows, less steps.
I'm into that one.
Yeah, walkout ranches are very popular. And here in Des Moines, we have basements,
Right.
whereas a lot of markets don't have basements, but Chicago certainly does. So we have basements that get finished for extra space. And our land is expensive because typically we're taking farm ground away, and that's valuable ground. But I think windows are key. Uh, More modern features, open plans, functionality in homes is now a big deal. How do homes flow from one area to another is key. And so that's something that we've tried to pride ourselves in having great plans that are very functional and usable, not having too much dead space. And you have to do that today because square footage is so expensive. Price per square foot is so expensive to build. You've got to make use of every square foot that you
Right.
put into a home and make it as functional as possible for today's family, today's empty nester, and so on.
So have you seen a trend towards, larger primary bedrooms?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
The guest rooms aren't used as much as they used to be used. I don't believe. So master bedroom suites are very, very important.
Mm-hmm.
So, uh,
Obviously,
that's a
kitchen.
key space. Open concept rooms with a great room, dining room, kitchen are all intertwined. I think is here to stay. I don't see that changing in the near future. Obviously, office space area is very important, but even that's limited because a lot of people work with a laptop in their lap in the great room,
Right.
or on the patio or wherever. So, you don't have to have an office to have a Zoom call,
Right.
you know.
What about the smartness of a home? The technology of a home, how's that changed?
It is affecting the market and it is changing by leaps and bounds. Des Moines is still on the cusp of it. We are building smart homes, but mainly it's to showcase them in the higher end price points
Okay.
for home show type purposes. And I'm sure some high end builders put in a lot of the smart devices uh, that are driving perception,
Okay.
but necessarily aren't being done on the lower price ranges because they're too costly to put in. And a good example, do we really need an app on our phone that opens and closes the garage door? Do we use it on a day-to-day basis? Yeah, we'll use it once in a while, but you don't need it that much in our market.
Right.
For me, it's very safe to have Amazon drop something on the front porch. I'm not worried about someone taking it. In
Right.
other markets, you want to have safe areas where they can put in. So maybe you want to open your garage when a delivery is being made, put the item in there, and then close it.
Got it.
So there's technology uses for crime areas or where you're concerned about that. In Des Moines, we're not so much concerned about packages being left on the front porch.
Got it. Do you in the last couple of years have you been doing more cameras in, I mean, as a standard thing, or is it an upgrade, any of that kind of thing?
It's an upgrade. Most people don't do it,
Okay.
even on a custom. Maybe they do it on their own and they install it on their own, or they put it in later, but they don't want to pay the upgrade cost to do it at the start. So that hasn't been a priority so far. I'm sure in some markets it is becoming more and more standard. The Ring doorbell type
Right.
atmosphere,
Right.
would be more standard. But we haven't got, this market has not gotten into it that much. I'd love to do it, but people just don't want to pay for it here.
Got it. What about like Wi-Fi? I don't even know how to say it. The ability. So I've been to your house and you have a lower level, and the Wi-Fi ability in the lower level seems just as good as it is in the upper level. And so is that something that you consciously made a point to do because people are going to be using laptops and internet enabled devices?
Well, developments are starting to get in that, and sometimes they contract with a internet provider for the whole development, and then that's brought into each and every home in that development. And so it's becoming certainly more common. When the home I'm in was built, uh, there was internet provider, but it wasn't a good one, and it was sketchy depending on each home did their own thing. So this development didn't have it. Whereas today I could go to 3 or 4 different types and they're right here in my yard, where I could bring them into the home. So it's come a long way, but new developments are getting that high speed right from the get-go. And I'm sure most of the major cities have that standard now.
Right.
I would think. So
Yeah,
we've been a
absolutely.
little slow to the uptick, but we're there, and it's something that people have to have. I mean, if you're going to work out of your home, you got to have high speed internet,
Right.
and everybody pretty much has it in my neighborhood.
Got it. So, one, I appreciate obviously you taking your time today, but let me ask you this. And I ask all my guests this question, if you, looking back at your career, if somebody said to you, hey, I want to be a home builder, and they come to you today, what advice would you give them?
Don't do it. No, no, no. It's a great field to be in. It's exciting. You get to work with a lot of different people, from the banks to the vendors to the customers. So it's an exciting business. It's an ever-changing business. But a key thing is that you need to be well financed, and you need to have money behind you because you got to own the lots in order to build. And so you got to have your money in the lots. And the days of banks financing your lots 100% went out with 2008. And so a lot of people were overextended because they didn't have any capital on lots, and they ended up owning way too many. And so a lot of them went bankrupt then, and banks got stuff back. And yeah, it's so now builders for the most part have to have some money, 20-25% of every lot you buy. And if you're buying a whole development where you want to build, in our case, the biggest project we did was 18 lots. That was still 20 acres of ground, dealing with the development side of it a little bit. You have to have some money behind you. And so you need to have that source, whether it be silent investors, whether it be family members. You have to have that source of ability to bring cash into the deal. So well finance is very important, but also the different traits on obviously knowing the home build, but knowing financing and how to work with banks. being able to work with clients and customers in building custom homes and being able to sell yourself and having a unique product. So knowing the industry, knowing the business, and you got to know your stuff, and you got to know it all. From the design work to the quality of the build to how to work with customers. So especially when you're starting out. So be a people person is real important.
What was the hardest thing that you had to learn being, I'm not talking the hardest lesson, but the hardest thing you had to learn as somebody who got into the home building business?
How to put a nail in a piece of wood and where to put it, and the structural nature of the home. I did not know that. I could finish off a home and had good um, taste for colors and putting things together like that. But the actual nuts and bolts of a home, that took some time to learn, and I'm sure I got laughed at a few times by my trim carpenters and framers and so on. But I tried to hire good people who knew what they were doing. So, I didn't care if they made fun of me because I didn't quite know where a header should go and where certain things, trusses, it's a complicated business,
Yeah.
and there's a lot that goes into it.
Here's the thing I gotta tell you, I don't know that I knew a lot of the stuff that you just shared with us today. I mean, peripherally, I knew what you were doing. And like I said, I've been to your houses and you've showed me other properties that you've built, but I don't know that I really realized the entire journey that you've been on since you started in real estate. And it is, to me, quite interesting just because, knowing where you started, seeing the progress as you've gone along, although not being in Des Moines myself to see it day to day, but certainly as I pop in and out over the years, to kind of see where you've gone and to see where you are at this point in your career. Could you have imagined years ago that you would be where you are today in this sort of home building process?
I want to say yes, but probably not. It's been quite a journey, and I've enjoyed it from the real estate aspect, selling to the home building to the real estate company that I had. So I've enjoyed the process and different businesses, and I've been lucky. And one of the great attributes that I've had and brought to the table is a spouse who earns a steady income and can give me health insurance. And so
Oh,
that's been a huge advocate to me being an entrepreneur and being in the business and owning a small company. So it's been a huge benefit to me to let me go out and do these things. So having someone behind you uh, to supply some of these things that you need, like a steady income, steady health insurance is vital to anybody starting out as an entrepreneur. So that really helps.
well,
So I've
there's
been
an
lucky.
excellent point. So you're saying go find a spouse that has health insurance and a job if you want to
There
be
you
a
go.
home builder. Is that it?
No, but that certainly helps along the way.
Well, all right. Any last words of advice you'd like to give either somebody who's getting into the business as an agent or somebody who wants to get in the business as a home builder?
A lot of people go into real estate thinking it's easy and I'm going to make quick money and I'm going to be rich. And uh, it's not. If you're going to do it, you may sell one or two homes quickly because you have some friends or relatives who are going to give you some business. But after that, you got to earn it and you got to know your stuff and read and learn and take it seriously, whether it be real estate or construction, because you'll be called to the carpet real fast if you don't know your stuff.
That's for sure. That's absolutely for sure. So, Tom, can you're going to give me your contact information. Is it okay if any of our listeners reach out if they've got questions for you?
Sure, no problem.
Excellent. Well, we appreciate that. Absolutely. And I do want to say thank you to you for taking time. I know you had a couple of things going on, and we had to shift this a couple of times because you've got a very busy life. And I appreciate you taking time out for me and for our listeners. And, certainly thank your wife for, allowing me to take some of your time when you have time off that you're not doing other things. So thank you so much for doing this for all of us. We really appreciate it. And I'm sure I will see you down the road.
No, thank you, Art, for doing what you're doing. It really adds to the information out there that people can gather. So I think you're doing a good thing, and keep it up.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. All right, everybody. We will see you on the next Real Estate Roundtable podcast. Thanks. Thanks again to our sponsor, I Love Real Estate School. Thanks for tuning in to the Real Estate Roundtable podcast. I hope you enjoyed hearing from our amazing guests and you picked up some valuable tips and insights that you can use in your own real estate business. If you liked what you heard today, please take a moment to like, subscribe, and share our podcast with your friends and colleagues. Your support means the world to us and helps us bring you more great content in the future. And if you're an agent who's interested in coaching, I'd love to hear from you. You can contact me directly through my website, myrealestatesalesmanager.com, or connect with me on social media. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you the next time in the Real Estate Roundtable podcast.